大家好, welcome back everyone. This is going to be part two of Zhongli Chinese and English translation differences. Last time we went through some of his voice lines. This time I'm going to go through some more of the detailed stuff like his talents, his voiceovers when he does his battle skills, and some probably little odds and ends going forward. So on his character card, we're going to see he has his title. Actually, all the Genshin characters have short little titles introducing them on the character cards. His is 陈氏贤友. Spoilers ahead, Zhongli is not a human. He is actually a god. So when we talk about 陈氏, the literal translation of this is actually like the dust world. We actually mean the mortal world, 陈氏. 贤友 means he's just like walking and strolling around and basically like meandering. So the character concept is he's meandering in the mortal world. And I think part of this explanation for his voice lines and his voice direction in Chinese lends to a person who is just wandering around. And for me, it's a big difference in the English voice lines and the Chinese voice lines. Because to me, the English one sounds like he's angry and he's like trying to do something about it. But in the Chinese one, it feels like he's just kind of resigned. And what I mean by resigned, I don't mean that he's just going to sit by and do nothing about it. I mean that he's trying to pass on everything to the people of the Yue and the Traveler, and basically all the future generations incoming is because it's no longer his time, it's someone else's time. For his idol talks, he's got a couple of lines. Some of them line up pretty well, but I think there's like very subtle differences. So we're going to listen to a couple of them moving forward, and I'm going to pause in between each one to talk a little bit about it.
旅程总有一天会迎来终点，不必匆忙。
Every journey has its final day. Don't rush.
So the one over here where it says every journey has its final day, I think there's a slight difference because it sounds like that this is like the last day of the journey, but in the Chinese translation, 会来到终点, it doesn't mean final day, it means to like get to the end of your journey. So sometimes I feel like when they says like final day, it sounds like that's it forever, instead of you do one journey and then you can go on to another journey.
为流通而造的船，遇到港口也会停泊。所以，离月是一切财富沉淀的地方。
Boats are made for transferring commodities back and forth, and those that come across Liu tend to stay a while. So it is where many things come to settle.
So this one over here, the one about boats and then like being used to transport stuff, everything was fine except to the part where it says settle. Because in the English it just says comes to settle, but in the Chinese it says 离月是一切财富沉淀的地方, where all the riches come to rest, is what that actually says to me. 财富 is like wealth and riches, and 沉淀 means like settle and like sediment. So that kind of is lost in this translation.
欲买桂花同载酒，只可惜故人，何日再见呢？
Osmanthus wine tastes the same as I remember. But where are those who share the memory?
So the last one here about the wine, 欲买桂花同载酒, is actually a poem from Tang Duoling, from Southern Song Dynasty. And the full actual line, the last line of it, is actually 欲买桂花同载酒，终不是少年游. And it's to describe like someone who goes to buy the same wine and goes to the same place, but nothing's the same like when he was young, which is the same sentiment. But I don't know if that translates properly because you have to know the poem to know the sentiment Zhongli's line is 只可惜故人何时再见 is similar in the sense because he doesn't know when he's going to see his old friends again. So for the person who buys the wine in the poem and then realizes that it's not the same as when he was young, I think it's the same feeling.
So next we're going to start getting into his like reactive voice lines and his idle talks and his attack voice lines. So did you know that the taking damage voice lines, there are actually two in Chinese and none in English? You guys are getting robbed. So we're going to play both of them now real quick.
大意了吗？不足为惧。
So he says two separate lines here. The first one is 大意了吗? And the second one is 不足为惧. 大意了吗 is like, did I get careless? 不足为惧 means there's nothing to be afraid of or nothing to fear.
Next up, we're going to take a look at Zhongli's fainting lines. He has three of them, and there's actually minor differences in all three of them.
略感疲惫。
I'm feeling a little off.
让你看到难堪的一面了。
You shouldn't see me like this.
磐石也会归于尘土。
Even bedrock can be turned to dust.
So the first one, he says, I'm feeling a bit off, but the Chinese is 略感疲惫. It's actually, I'm feeling a little bit tired. The second one where he says, I've 让你看到了难堪的一面的, that actually means I've let you see an ugly side of me or like an unbecoming side of me instead of what the English one says. And the last one is they use bedrock, but if you told me 磐石, most people just think like giant rock. So there's a little bit of difference in there as well. But overall, I think the translation was fine. So it's not entirely like wrong. It's just the way it's presented and the way it's said makes it feel a little bit like different to me. All right, on to the talents. So there's only a couple here I want to talk about. It's his E, his Q, and a couple of his passives. So the first one is 地心, which is his E, 天星, which is his Q, and then the two other ones, I think it's just passive. So one is 玄言成段, and the other one is 翠金转玉. So the E, 地心, actually means like the heart of the earth. And in English, they translate it to something like Dominus Lapidus. So like the owner of stone, but 地心 is heart of the earth, and actually, a common phrase we use is 地心引力, which is gravity. So the Q, 天星, is translated as planet befall. 天星, as a literal translation, just means like heaven's star or star in heaven. Tian, in this case, we use, or I'm using heaven to explain it because it doesn't really necessarily mean like the Judeo-Christian heaven. It just means some sort of nebulous concept that Chinese people believe in culturally sometimes, that there's a natural order to things, that the operation of these orders really move things along or how things are supposed to operate. In terms of how the world is. So that's why a lot of Zhongli's lines, when they get translated over, he goes on and on about order, but that's not necessarily the best one-to-one comparison in terms of the translation, I think. It has a much more nebulous concept than like some sort of mandate or some sort of order that he himself can bring down. Right, so the next one we're going to talk about is his resonant waves talent. In Chinese, it's 悬岩成段. So 悬岩 is just like a cliff, whereas 成段is a decision from like the emperor, really. It's like I even know how to properly like explain this. It's just like the decision from like the giant mountain. This one actually confused me. I'm like, why am I putting a cliff and a king's decision back to back? So this one's actually kind of confusing to me. So this next one, the last one, the dominance of Earth talent, where his attacks and stuff base skill off of his max HP, actually cracked me up a little bit because 催金赚玉 actually is a 成语and it describes a very delicious meal. So these two definitely don't line up, and I guess if you eat really well, you get buff or something. I don't know, but yeah, I mean maybe your health is really high and you do more damage, but this one the translations just don't line up. All right, now we're going to get into some fun parts. He has quite a few lines when he goes through his E skill. So we're going to go through them and then we'll talk about them as we go through them. As we go through these, I want to make note that a lot of Zhongli's stuff is 成语, so idiomatic expressions, usually for characters. It's kind of like a set phrase, and usually it's kind of like a longer meaning that we've condensed down to for characters, as it's a very literary form. So that's why I believe a lot of the English translations are just like single snappy words, but they lose a lot of meaning because they're trying to shorten all of that meaning into the same time frame, I guess. So moving forward through these skills, we're going to talk about some of those differences and some of the meanings that have been lost.
臂力千仞，
Rise!
So the first one, rise, 臂力千仞. 臂力千仞 is used to describe a very steep cliff face. So 臂力 is like a vertical wall style. So 墙壁 is like what you would say for wall, and 力zeng is like straight up. 刃, this one is a old form of measurement that is either I guess like 7 meters, not really 7 meters, it's 7尺到8尺. So 1尺, 1尺 is actually 30 centimeters. I did the math on this. So 千仞 is 1,000 of these 仞. So if 千仞 is 7 to 8 尺and 1尺is 30 centimeters, the total length or height of this thing is 1.3 to 1.5 miles high. I have to go on a minor segue here to again plug a cultural reference in Legend of Condor Heroes. In Legend of Condor Heroes, there is a set of siblings. Their names are respectively Qiu Qianren, Qiu Qianci, and Qiu Qianzhang. The Qianren is the same here, and then Qianci and Qianzhang are also units of measurements. So I'm going to guess that I think the oldest one is Qianren, and then it goes to like Qianzhang and then Qianci. So the oldest one is technically the longest one, and then the youngest one is the shortest form of measurement.
震天撼地，
Quake!
All right, the second one line he has for his E is quake, 震天撼地. 震天撼地 literally means to shake the heavens and rock the earth. So yeah, quake is technically correct, but lacks the flavor.
弥坚不摧，
Crumble!
Next one is crumble, 弥坚不摧. 弥坚不摧 means to be able to destroy any solid object. So again, like I think for the next few we're just gonna be hitting the same point. Like meaning is there, but it loses a lot of the flavor text, so to speak. So let's go to the next one.
聚收并蓄，
Gather!
聚收并蓄, gather. Again, same thing, gather, but the actuality is to gather all sorts of different things. It doesn't specify anything, it just says everything gathers together. So there's that missing.
安如磐石，
Stabilize!
Anrupanshi means to be like a giant boulder and unmoving. It means to be very like solid and steady, so stabilize applies, but like I said before, misses all the flavor.
固若金汤，
Solidify!
The last one is actually completely different. 固若金汤, it says solidify, but if you want the literal translation, it means to be solid like golden soup. The meaning of it is it's like a impenetrable fortress kind of deal. So it's like a castle made of solid gold and like boiling water as like the moat. It's used to describe like a very well defended position. So solidify, kind of, sort of, but it just doesn't mean it's like an impenetrable fortress. Now for his Q, his alt. Remember how I said earlier that we're going to be talking about order and tian a lot because this is all tian 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 in his Qs. So without further ado, let's start.
天理长驱，
Order guide you!
All right, the first one, order guide you. It's a combination from the translation of 天理长驱. 天理 is like the reasoning of Tian, and then 长驱 usually comes from like 长驱直入. That's my understanding of it. So it's like 长驱直入 means in an army to advance quickly. So the natural order advances quickly, coming down on you, that kind of deal. These sound cool, but they really have a very open interpretation in terms of meaning, and they're also very hard to translate.
此乃天道。
This is order!
Next one is 此乃天道. This is order. This is probably the most reasonable translation here as 此乃. This is 天道, the path of Tian. So yeah, natural order. I think that's fine.
天动万象，
I will have order!
天动万象. I will have order. This is a combination of a couple of concepts. 万象 actually means like all life and existence. So 天动 means like when heaven moves. So possibly here, like when the heaven moves, everything blank. It's missing a something here in terms of grammar structure to me. So either it's like when heaven moves, everything stops, or like when the heavens change, everything changes with it. It's all very, like I said, very nebulous in terms of understanding. And now on to the last part, constellations. This part of constellations is also very written in very literary form. Very few people, if anyone, speak like this in like day-to-day communication. So again, we're going to enter this really nebulous translation area as we talk about it. So constellation 1, rock, the backbone of Earth. In Mandarin, it's 沿着六合引之为骨. 六合in this case is not some of the other 六合 that you may have heard in wuxia. This one just means north, south, east, west, like the four directions, and then heaven and earth. So this translation is pretty reasonable. 沿着, yen is more like a rock or a stone, so yeah. All directions use 引之为骨 means to bring this rock from all directions as the bone. So backbone of earth, this one's actually a pretty good translation. 使者八荒唱誉而名. 使者 stone. It says the cradle of jade is the English one. I have a different take on this one. 八荒 also means everywhere in the world. 唱誉而名, if I took this apart and explained it individually, means the singing jade sings brightly. So 唱誉 is to sing, 唱 is to sing, 誉 is jade, is like a verb here, ming is bright. So that's my interpretation of that. So the third constellation says Jade simmering through the darkness. Mandarin, 龟章明乃不宜其灰. Gui and Zhang are actually two different types of jade tablets. So Gui Zhang together is also a type of jade tablet. Ming is like twilight dusk, so the darkness, or like, it's turning dark. Nai bu yi qi hui. The darkness is unable to move your particular, like, will dim your light. So nothing will dim your light. So this one simmering through darkness, nothing will dim your light. Not bad. Huangzong 破而不夺其间. So topaz, unbreakable, and fearless. Huangzong is like a yellow type of jade, so maybe I'm not like a geologist, so maybe topaz is a type of jade. I think that's fair. 破而不夺其间, unbreakable and fearless, kind of iffy. For this one, when I read 破而不夺其间, 破 is to break, 而不夺 means to be unable to take away. Qi Jian Qi in this one in classical Chinese is referring to the subject, which is Huangzong. So even though you're broken or damaged, you will not lose your durability or strength. So I don't know if my interpretation is correct. I like the concept of unbreakable here. Maybe that's the case for the po here. But for me, it feels like I'm worried I'm stretching for that. So my interpretation is even if damaged, you remain strong. Changbi 屈之长照天理. Lazuli, herald of the order. Changbi is like a blue jade. In this case, B is not the same as Bi Li. It's a different B. This one is specifically like a jade, like plate style thing. So 屈之长照天理, it's to like drive or draw like the lines of order. So 天理长春, this is a 天理 that's the same as this Q, and the 屈 here is also the same one. So it's like there's a relationship here, I think, between the writer when they were writing the Q lines and then this one. It's like there's a certain order that Zhongli expects to be held to, being, god of contracts and all that. So I think there's a pretty decent translation, Herald of the Order. So good and bads with this one. They say Chrysos, bounty of the Dominator. I looked up Chrysos. It returned to me something about Chrysos is the Greek mythology of Spirit of Gold. In the Mandarin, it's Jin Yu, so gold jade. So I think that's, I guess, fitting. I don't like the bounty of the Dominator because in Mandarin it says 礼与天地四方. It's gifting yourself to the world, or giving gifts to the world. There's no Dominator here. I feel like the English translation here is painting Zhongli as a completely different character. As I mentioned before from the beginning, he's basically just wandering around our mortal world because he doesn't have anything else better to do. But when I listen to his like English translations and look at this, it's like he comes off as angry. Alright, I think that's it for Zhongli and his part of the videos. If you guys have any characters that you would like to see me do this video essay stuff on, please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.